Okay, welcome to the first assignment. Today we're just going to be creating a simple composition within Adobe Illustrator. Hopefully uh, you've read the lessons or the presentations on shape and proportion and kind of looked at some of the Adobe Illustrator samples I had for you there in presentation number 2. We're going to take a look at setting up a new document here, and I may break this into separate videos so you can come back whenever you need to watch the next video. And one of the first things you want to do is make sure you have Adobe Illustrator installed. Mine happens to be in my toolbar over here, or you might find it in your Applications folder, and it's AI or Adobe Illustrator CC. All right, so one of the first things we're going to do is just open up Adobe Illustrator. Just going to click it, and it will launch, and you'll see the Adobe Illustrator logo and the Adobe Creative Cloud, and when it initializes, it installs some plugins and some fonts, simple fonts and that kind of stuff. So don't worry about that part. Let's take a look. This is how mine is set up. Yours may not look exactly like this, and don't worry about that. We will come back and set up, I'll have you set up the palettes, uh, these little areas, the way I'd like for you to set them up for this lesson. Be the easiest, most efficient way to work. I'll kind of show you that. And one of the first things we want to do is we want to start a new document. So I'm going to file new. And what I'm going to be doing here is setting up the document to work in. Now, extremely important that you set it up correctly in the beginning because we don't want to have to go back and adjust size and placement of objects once we complete our composition. Because we'll have to scale and push things around, and it may not end up being the same composition if we have to change it. So we want to start with a new document, and we want to make sure we set this up correctly in the very beginning. This is called our working space. And I'm just going to call this Lesson 1. Now, even though we put a name here, keep in mind that this file has not been saved yet. So if you work, all day and you do not save this file, it will not save. So we want to make sure once we set the document up, we'll go to File, Save, and then we'll save it. And make sure we save all these settings that we started with this document. Okay. Don't worry about profiles. We'll come back to that. One of the things we want to talk about is number artboards. We can set up multiple documents inside Adobe Illustrator. We are just working with one page right now, so just leave that set to 1. And you have some multiple sizes that you can set up here. And we are just going to work with letter size, which is fine for today. And you'll see that it's set up to 8.5 or 11 inches wide by 8.5 tall, which is what we want to work with. And if it's not set to that, you can always just type in 11IN, okay, and 8.5IN. And we want to look over here at these two little buttons here. And you can also see that my increments are set to inches. If they aren't set to inches, go ahead and do that. It's probably going to be best for you to work with inches right now. Let's see. Okay, so I'm at 11 inches wide by 8.5 tall. That's going to be a landscape format. You can always change it real quick by going to Portrait. So we have Portrait here and Landscape here. Okay. In the bleed area, really not going to be working with that too much in this class, but I'm just going to type in 0IN and click this button here, and it should set all those to 0. We may come back and talk about bleed, but that's really set up for actually setting it to a printing press so that it prints out correctly with enough color so that when we trim it, it doesn't trim with a white edge. And let's take a look down here. If you don't have advanced, really the default settings in Adobe Illustrator are fine. But if it is open, usually we want to be working in CMYK. If you look right here, it says CMYK. That's the mode we want to be working in, so you might want to open that just to make sure. 300 ppi or pixels per inch is very high resolution. That's high enough to put on a printing press, and that's fine for what we're doing with. We're just making really simple compositions. So just keep in mind that the more layers we have at this resolution, we'll really start making large files. So just kind of want to watch that as we're kind of building this file. And don't worry about any of these others. Preview mode, leave that set to default. And templates, let's not worry about any templates right now. We want to set up our own document. So we have lesson 1, one artboard, 11 inches wide by 8.5 tall, no bleed, CMYK, 300 PPI, and preview set to default. Perfect, ready to go. Oh, units set to inches, probably important because you know inches probably better than these others. So we'll come back to some of those other units. All right, so that's what it should look like. Just take a moment, take a look at that, and I'm going to click OK. And there we go. We have an 8.5 tall by 11 wide. Now let me talk about that real quick. Usually when somebody sends you a document measurement, it's going to be width by height. So this is really an 11 inches by 8.5 inch tall document. So it's usually width by height. So just keep that in mind. And when we're talking about proportion, that's kind of important. Okay. Now keep in mind that this has not been saved yet, even though it has a name here. And we'll talk about this in an upcoming video. But we want to go ahead and save this. So I'm going to File, Save As. Okay. Now one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my desktop. And I've created a folder on here. Let me see if I have it. Okay. Actually, I haven't, so I'm going to create a new folder and call it RMCAD. And then inside there, I'm going to save this as Lesson 1. And you may want to create subfolders with different classes in it, but it's extremely important that you keep track of all your files because you know how frustrating it is when you lose files. So anytime you can create folders and save, name them correctly, to what exactly you understand, it to be, that's great. I'm just going to put it inside my folder here and call it Lesson 1, and I'm going to save it as an AI, which is Adobe Illustrator native. And if we look, we have some different formats to save it in, but we're just new to Illustrator, so let's just stay with Lesson 1 .ai, which is Adobe Illustrator native format, AI, and click Save. And it should save it inside our folder. Let's take a look. Here are our options. Illustrator CC, which is version 17. You can see you can save down as well. Let's not do that. Let's just leave it set there. Fonts, just leave that kind of set to default. And I would leave this set to default pretty much. We'll come back if we need to change some other things, but default's going to be your best bet. Okay. So let's just click OK. And now we've saved our file. Let's take a look, and I'm going to look inside my folder that I created. Okay, and I'll open it up, and there it is right there. Okay, so what we've done is we've created a file that's ready to start working on. This is our blank canvas that we're going to be working with. And don't worry if you have some other palettes open. Basically, you can find all your palettes under Window. Now, you don't want to have all these open at one time because it's going to take up a lot of real estate on your screen. So if you do have a bunch of these open, you might want to close some of them. And to do that, I can just pull them out and just close them like this. Just grab them by that little tab and close them. If you have these over here, just leave those. And of course, we're going to need all the tools. So kind of leave those kind of where they're at. Okay. All right, so that's the first video, and the next one I'm going to do is we're going to actually get in and look at some of the tools. Okay, so if you want to stop this video and take a rest and then come back to it, please do so.